community, Richard Hart Twitter momentarily before we delve into things.
Continues for a second night. Nearby lies a trail of burned out cars along one of the main thoroughfares of this suburb west of Paris.
Apologies, that's France. For those of you who don't know, Richard Hart decided yesterday to come out of the blue and send out a tweet. Now, I would pull it up, but unfortunately, I can't because I'm blocked. He sent out a tweet saying, essentially, that he was quite surprised that people were expecting single-side staking pools for PulseX, and how he thought this was rather ridiculous. Now, I pointed out that, hey, single-side staking pools for PulseX is kind of a big deal. It's kind of its whole value proposition. Without single-side staking pools, PulseX is essentially a duct tape on token, very similar to Uniswap without any real use case. It might have some great tokenomics, 100%, but tokenomics is not use case. So I was pointing out that one of the major intrinsic value proposition for PulseX is the fact that Richard Hart set the expectation of design intention that there would be single-side staking, and that's massively valuable for its value proposition. It gives people a reason to hold PulseX. It gives a reason people not to sell PulseX, and removing this removes a massive reason to hold PulseX and to buy PulseX. This is a huge detriment to PulseX if Richard Hart just now, all of a sudden, after years of development and mainnet being out for weeks, is now all of a sudden deciding to remove single-side staking pools. This is a huge deal. I was pointing this out, I got blocked. So, thankfully, Richard Hart seems to have been getting some backlash because this completely destroys the value proposition of
that the individuals that are still in the system do the most, are able to do the most exits. You have to get as many people out of the system as possible. And then you can go down the case of, well, they weren't true believers. They weren't true believers, and so they didn't get their exits. Interesting thought experiment. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are.
I think it's an interesting thought experiment, and I see it play out in tweets from people that I respect and I appreciate, whether it's Richard or your friend Somi or yourself. I see other commentators and influencers in the Hex, PulseChain, PulseX ecosystem say something similar, which is you have to wash out 90% of the participants so that the believers, the evangelistic, the hardcore that survive a drop in perceived value, and they stick around, right? So that the chart can look better from a lower starting point of value and then climb back to its original perceived value. That may be true. I'm not an expert in economics.
Yeah, look, I want to react to that so far. So, look, even if that was an effective strategy, it's an open question as to whether or not it is, it's a deeply fucked up strategy. The idea that for your coin to do well, you as a founder need to be so unclear and so flip-floppy and gaslight your community in order to do well long term. I mean, fuck, man, if that's what it takes to do well long term, I don't think that's a game a lot of people even want to participate in. I would hate for that to be the case for what it takes for crypto to succeed. I would like to think that through proper game theory and the communication of clear design intention, that would be enough to attract new participants and grow things over time. So look, I'm not convinced by this argument, and even if it was an effective one, it's a terribly toxic one. And if people catch on...
Welcome back to the channel. Guys, I hope you're having a great day, having a great 4th of July weekend for those of you all in the United States celebrating Independence Day. For those of you who aren't, we do have Zindependence Day, right? And we're going to cover that in this video today, a little bit about what that means. But as you got to see from the opening clip comes from a channel called Brandon B. you got to see us talking about how Richard Hart in the Pulse ecosystem is flooding the PulseX project, right? This is what's, people are coming up with, reading his tweets and seeing what the market sentiment is for the product. And so I want to say I'm very proud of Brandon B. This is why I remain in cryptocurrency. For those of you all who wonder, like with our project Bitcoin NYK, why we believe so strongly in it, while we're still here, despite the great disappointment and the projects that the crypto community chooses. This is the reason why. People like Brandon B, who wake up at some point. Now, it's unfortunate, like many of us, the waking up can come after the fact and come a bit late, but better late than never. And so in his latest revelation of starting to have 2020 vision and what's going on with the Pulse ecosystem, Hex ecosystem, he gets blocked, right? Why does he get blocked? Well, he gets blocked because he can see clearly now, like many of us could see. And that's what happens, right? When you start to see clearly, you become a threat. Now, what a lot of people do is they go, oh, the Pulse community, the Hex community, these people are doing this because these are stupid people, right? But wait a minute. I can't say that because I was involved in the Hex and Pulse community when it first came out. I think it was a different product then, but anybody can make that argument that people get in, early days and maybe they don't see the light. But the problem is when you do see the light and you start to deny reality, right? So this is what the video is going to be about today. We're talking about in the PulseX, particularly what's happening with PulseX is they're stopping single side staking, right? It's Richard Hart. They feel that they were led to believe that was going to exist. It doesn't exist, and the problem the community is finding with that is they're saying, well, if that's the case, that's one of the main compositions of the project. So if you don't have that, you don't really have a use case, right? For for PulseX, right? It's just then the burn mechanism of tokenomics, and so they start to get upset about that. But part of that problem is they never listened to Richard Hart in a sense, because Richard Hart from the beginning let everybody know he didn't care about use cases. He only cared about the tokenomics and making money. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, people in the Pulse and Hex community still believe Richard Hart's playing some type of 4D chess. They believe that he's a genius playing 4D chess, and nobody understands that. And I will say this about being a genius playing 4D chess. In this community, it's become a lot easier to convince people you're a genius playing 4D chess than to be a genius playing 4D chess, right? And so now that people are starting to see the light, there's a lot of disappointment, obviously. And it's going to be more of that. And then, I think the thing I would say to Brandon B is that even if he thinks it's a crappy move on Richard Hart's part, here's the reality of the situation. Richard Hart has already gotten rich off of his exploitation, I believe, in the Hex and Pulse community. So at this point, however it goes, he's kind of won the game there. He's going to be okay. His incentive for success is not you guys' incentive for success. The other part is, I think in the Pulse ecosystem, like many of us who start cryptocurrency projects, people are finding out it's very difficult to get people in these projects, get liquidity in. And so what do you do to make your charts look good when that happens? The only thing that he can do, since he can't succeed any other way, is get out the people, let them take a loss, lose their value. And that core group of believers that are the true believers, the charts can look better. They're going to hold the cryptocurrency longer. They're going to be less speculative and so on, right? They call that the we can strategy as such. Now, the reality of the situation is the best projects don't have the huge price gains, because when everybody comes into a cryptocurrency, the project starts to stabilize. Liquidity stabilizes it. The more liquidity you have, the less the value can go up, right? So in those cases, use case become the main reason you use the cryptocurrency, right? It's not making money. That's what I have been saying to many of you guys all along. But, people who frequent Las Vegas casinos and have a gambling mindset, not an investor mindset, not a use case mindset, these are very short-term thinking people, which is always a bad thing. They hope for those type of situations, and they don't generally last. They go away, and then you have to resort to instances like this. The other unfortunate part is, that a lot of this occurs because the project really isn't whole. It's not a good project, right? So when it's not a good project, you have to resort to tokenomics and trying to, make money, because outside of just trying to make the price go up, there is no use to this. Now, the only problem I have with Brandon B is that a blind man could see that Richard Hart was saying this all along. He's been doing this all along, and it's been more dumps than pumps, right? These projects have been more down than up. Besides the initial momentum of Hex, and a lot of people have lost on Hex as well. There hasn't been any glory days. They're living off of past history, and half a decade ago history, and nothing new or great has happened since then. And that is a problem, right? That's a problem that people, I think, in the post community need to wake up to. I tell them, hey, try projects like Bitcoin MYK, right? As such. Good projects that really have use cases, right? People say, oh, I don't understand what Bitcoin NYK is, what use case it has, right? Listen, guys, Bitcoin NYK is better than Twitter. Elon Musk just shoved out over $40 billion on Twitter. It's better than Twitter with like cryptocurrency incorporated into it, and it supplies everyone's a citizen's dividend. Also, you don't own Twitter. You don't have any say over Twitter, right? And you can get kicked off of Twitter. And at least on Bitcoin NYK, we have a governance model. We'll explain all that in our next video, though. But yeah, that's where you're at with that. You're at with people getting blocked. They're getting censored, right? I thought part of crypto principles, people didn't like censorship, right, and all that stuff, right? So Richard Hart has no respect for that. Obviously, if he blocks people all the time, you hear about him blocking people when they say things he doesn't like. He doesn't, respond to them. So it becomes, at what point do you guys wake up, right? Now, a lot of you guys who watch the channel as such, not all of you, some have, I think, made the right decisions, checked out projects like Bitcoin NYK, but some of you in a very disappointing